Greetings from Austin, Texas and Circuit of the Americas, and it's a pleasure to have your company for the second round of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS season. Welcome to Austin and this beautiful circuit. My name is Ryan Marine. Calvin Fish is alongside. We'll have Amanda Busick down in the pit lane after an exciting season opener at Sonoma Raceway. We scored the first points towards the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS, a global championship for GT manufacturers. Points scored in all four of the SRO's global GT World Challenge championships here in the U.S., as well as in Europe, Australia, and Asia. On the screen, you see the manufacturers involved in this prestigious championship. Points scored according to class and according to number of cars in those classes. You see the newcomer to the mix, McLaren, and happy to report we do have a McLaren on site here at COTA, the series debut of the 720S GT3 run by Inception Racing. One of the many storylines we'll be keeping an eye on as we continue to build towards the season finale of the Fanatec GT World Challenge all over the world. Well, pleasure to be here for sure. One of the great tracks in North America. It is a 3.426-mile layout, 20 turns in all. And it's been an interesting weekend in a lot of respects, Calvin, because Mother Nature has thrown us a curveball or two. Most notably, it's dry right now when every forecast was calling for a downpour.
It did. We expected a wet day throughout, and we haven't seen any rain since we arrived this morning. It was a damp racetrack for qualifying. Certainly had everyone on the edge of their seats.
Let's go take a look around this racetrack with our Porsche track preview.
Hi, my name is Jan Halen. Welcome to the Porsche track preview as we get ready to start a lap at Circuit of the Americas in the Wright Motorsports Porsche. Coming onto the front straightaway, out of turn 20, first gear all the way up to fifth gear, almost reaching 240 kilometers an hour. Hard brake zone up the hill, down the first gear. Very good place to overtake. Very wide on entry. Down the hill into turn 2. Fourth gear, flat out, and then reaching almost 230 kilometers an hour for the brake zone here into the S's, down to third, back to power, into turn 6, back to power, using all the curbing here on the inside, getting ready for that transition into turn 7. Again, hard on the curbs, on the brakes here, down the first, up the hill, using up all the track here on the entry, trying not to exceed track limits as we go down the hill. And now going into one of the first hairpins here at Circuit of the Americas. Great place to overtake, braking at the 100, fifth gear, down the first, very wide again on the entry, and again trying not to exceed track limits coming onto the back straightaway. This is the longest straightaway here at the Circuit of the Americas, so it creates a good opportunity to overtake again into turn 12. Braking just past the 150 sign, hard on the brakes here, sixth gear down the first, big compression here at the apex of 12, back to power, third gear, down the first, big rotation here, and then we get to what is going to be the slowest corner here at Circuit of the Americas. First gear, turn 15 here, and then ready to drive into the famous carousel. Triple right-hander. Very hard to get this right. A little bit of push here, car gets a little loose in the middle, back to power, and then ready for turn 19, which it's always a tough corner, not to exceed track limits. Race control always watching over us there. Hard on the brakes, down the first again for turn 20, and onto the front straightaway. And that was a lap here at Circuit of the Americas.
Thanks to Jan Halen for that tour of COTA. Now let's get down to the pit lane where Amanda Busick has a gentleman who had an excellent opening season, start to the season, I should say, at Sonoma.
And he's facing these racetracks for the first time. But guys, the conversations in pit lane is, are we going to see rain today? Well, you'll remember in qualifying, it was the last lap that Jordan Pepper put that Lamborghini in the pole spot. When you think of the impending rain potentially, how important is the pole position?
I mean, it's definitely very important in such tricky condition that rain can come or not. It's more in front you are, the better it is. So Jordan did an amazing last lap. We had a few issues with the tires this morning, but now it looks again like it's just dropping again now, so it's gonna be a funny race.
Thank you, Amanda. Great to hear from Andrea Caldarelli. Pole-sitting car, courtesy of a great run from Jordan Pepper in qualifying. We'll get to that story in a second. We've got some late developing stories to touch on first. One, you see the windshield wiper. Well, we've got some reports of raindrops in the pit lane and around portions of this circuit, but the other, we were set to see 16 cars take the grid, Cal, but we've learned here recently we're down to 15.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Compass Racing Acura is not going to be seeing the green flag here today. They had some kind of engine issue in the qualifying, not enough time to change it out, so that's really disappointing for the team. Carl Thompson celebrating his birthday here today, the team principal there, but they're going to fight hard to be back tomorrow on the grid.
K-Pax Racing swept the front row in qualifying for this race. They swept the weekend at Sonoma, coming in with a ton of momentum, but here's a huge curveball. You can see the raindrops on the windshield. What, if anything, as we're on the second of 2 formation laps, can these teams do to be prepared for a sudden downpour that could perhaps be imminent? Well,
the weather forecasts have been so off. I mean, even if you were looking at the radar and looking at the forecast here for the race start time, could you believe it? So in terms of the setup, could you adjust, maybe go a little bit softer? I doubt. I think everyone will be on a full dry setup. It's up to the drivers now to deal with it.
One more quick update from the pit lane with Amanda.
Well, guys, in Sonoma, Dakota Dickerson was the teammate to Taylor Hagler at Racer's Edge. They are part of the Honda Performance Development. When you look back at the Sonoma race, what did you learn from your team that you can bring forward here to compete at COTA?
You know, the whole thing was really just consistency and staying out of trouble. Obviously, I wasn't racing there, so this is still going to be my first sports car race this weekend. But, you know, the team's got a bunch of experience both at this track and just in sports cars in general. I've got a good bit of experience here before and a good bit of experience in the wet, as it looks like it's about to start raining here. So really looking forward to it, and it should be fun for a first sports car race.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Awesome story. Jacob Abel, part of the HPD GT3 Driver Academy last year, sharing the car with Taylor Hagler, another alum of that academy. And as mentioned, Dakota Dickerson started at Sonoma. They'll be swapping on and off, and until this weekend, it had been quite a while since Jacob Abel had been behind the wheel of this GT3 Acura NSX. So quick learning curve, especially with the weather.
It really is, and I didn't realize it was last October he last sat in this race car prior to race week here. So that's a big transition, coming out of the single seaters, jump back in a GT machine. He doesn't have a ton of experience anyway with a roof over his head, so he's done a really nice job. But the Acura, as he said, is a really potent weapon in the rain. When they made their debut many years ago with this NSX, it's gone through evolution since then, but it struggled a little bit for drive pace, but it was dynamite in the rain in the Rolex 24-hour race, so it could do well here today.
Definitely one to keep an eye on. It's an experienced team as well. Racer's Edge Motorsports running that car, and they have been extremely successful at Circuit of the Americas over the last couple of years. We did see the AF Corsa Ferrari at the back of this field. It's the lone AM-class car in the field. Had an incident in qualifying. Looks like that's been repaired. That is very good news indeed, with JC Sada set to go to get this race started. Lamborghini Urus safety car pulling ahead of the field. It's an all K-Pax Racing front row. Then Michael Dinan in the Turner BMW to the inside. Series newcomer Brendan Iribe will be to his right side. Here comes the field of 15 cars out of the final corner, waiting for that green flag just a little bit further down the front stretch. In a moment as we make that left-hand turn onto the pit straight. Apprehension up and down this field with the windshield wipers starting to go, the rain starting to come down. Here we go, third race of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America presented by AWS Season, and a big move by Michael Dinan. Gets a great jump, and he goes to the lead in the Turner BMW.
Really nice start there, just lit the fuse, and that turbo motor in the BMW lit, and he grabs the lead. But now side by side here with Jordan Pepper going through turn 2.
And Jordan Pepper loves these mixed conditions. He has thrived in them over the course of his career. Held off for the moment, though, by Michael Dinan in just his third ever GT3 race. Just a little bit further behind, it is the second K-Pax car running in tow with Giovanni Venturini behind the wheel of that green machine.
Super impressed with Michael Dinan here. The confidence that he's displaying here, admittedly, is just the opening lap, but to go for the lead, hold on to it, go side by side with one of the best in the business in Jordan Pepper, and hold on to it. That turn of BMW has come alive quickly.
Really impressive after a struggle-filled weekend at Sonoma. On board here with the DXDT racing car, sponsored by CrowdStrike. George Kurtz behind the wheel. He'll be turning that over to Colin Brown a little bit later on.
On board here now, winding up through the gears down this back straightaway. Got a peak speed at about 160 miles an hour as they get to the brake zone for turn 12.
And driving into the unknown, no one knows how much grip is out there. They don't know where the rain is falling around this racetrack. That's going to be fascinating to watch. Here comes Pepper making a lunge up the inside. Dinan holds him off for the moment, but leaves that door cracked open. And Jordan Pepper needs no second invitation.
Yeah, watch Pepper. He's going to dive for that apex there. Michael took a really wide line through 14, opens up the door. They're now side-by-side acceleration run. That BMW may beat him to turn 16, and he does.
And that opens up an opportunity now for Giovanni Venturini and the sister K-Pax Racing Lamborghini. They've been picking up the table scraps of the sister cars so far this season. You better believe Giovanni and his co-driver Corey Lewis, they want a taste of the spoils.
Yeah, but you got to be so careful. One of the rules of play with a two-car operation is don't hit your teammate. So he's just got to sit there and let things settle in a bit. A little bit sideways there for Michael Dinan. Jordan Pepper goes to the inside in the black Lamborghini.
But you could see the horsepower in that BMW. What can Jordan Pepper do in the braking zone into turn one? Pulls up alongside Venturini, looking to follow him through. Pepper to the point. Dinan slots back in second.
Yeah, Venturini got to the brake pedal a little bit late, was probably into the ABS, had to try and find some real estate there to work with. Fortunately, no one turned in on him.
And lurking in the background is Brendan Iribe, making his debut in this series and the team's debut in North America.
Incredible. I mean, for that man to be up at the sharp end here, great qualifying performance in tricky conditions. Only his third season of racing, ran in GT4 back in 2019, made the switch to GT3 competition, but he's used to running over in Europe, so these kind of tricky conditions he's probably used to, but nonetheless, quite the statement.
Speaking of statements, Michael Dinan on those opening few laps, yeah, he lost the spot, but he's racing, displaying a lot more maturity than you would expect out of someone with just a handful of years of car racing experience, dating back to a couple of starts 3 years ago, and then 2 seasons in GT4 racing, just his second race weekend in the GT3 car, and looking right at home.
That's what 17 wins will do for you, Ryan.
Now, the winningest driver in SRO America last year across both Pirelli GT4 America Sprint and Sprint X combinations, and his co-driver, Robbie Foley, from Sprint X last year, moving up to GT3 with him. Another young guy, but he does have a lot of GT3 experience.
This is Sector 3. Once you get through the brake zone in turn 12, this is Sector 3 where it really tightens up, and this with the Lamborghini should be a little bit stronger. Slightly shorter wheelbase allows it to transition, change direction a little bit quicker than that long wheelbase BMW M6, but Michael's hanging tough. It's not like Jordan Pepper is disappearing into the distance. He's hanging with him.
I wonder just how proud Robbie Foley is in this moment. He has taken this young man under his wing and really coached him up after a trying 2019 season to bounce back the way he did last year with a couple of championships, and now showing incredible pace and resiliency here in GT3. I'm just blown away by what Dinan has done.
Yeah, and I think, he had raw speed in 2019, but kind of had a lot of mistakes, and that really cost him in terms of the results. He settled back down, and under Robbie's tutelage, as you said, he's really become a very accomplished race car driver, but making the switch from dominating last year up to GT3 competition, being put in the pro category. They thought they were going to be in like a silver or a pro-am level of competition, suddenly in with the big boys. Michael's got to get his head around it. Talking to Robbie after that first round of competition, he said Michael's just got to realize it's a different ball game. You're not going to go out and dominate race weekends anymore. It's all about the building process, and that's what they're getting to now. Also, with their testing program, getting used to this BMW M6 on the Pirelli tires was a big learning curve.
Absolutely. We saw on that race vision powered by AWS, Corey Lewis looking on, one of the K-Pax racing drivers, But on that race vision stat just a second ago, the straight line speed of the BMW, that was a talking point in Sonoma Raceway too, but at Sonoma, there's not as many straightaways to work with. Here at COTA, you can really use that to your advantage.
You certainly can, and it's all about the lap time. You're trying to balance lap time, so it's horses for courses, and certainly the BMW has a bit more power, is able to leverage that into certain sectors of the racetrack, but the Lamborghini, in terms of its weight, in terms of its ability to get through the corners, so as you can see, it's pretty good in terms of this configuration of racetrack, how evenly matched they are.
Losing a little bit of ground. The gap now to Pepper is just about a second. Giovanni Vinerini, experienced Lamborghini factory driver, has not been able to make many inroads on the youngster Michael Don.
And looking behind Pepper, everyone's pretty evenly matched, running lap times in the 2:10-second range, whereas Pepper's dipped down into the 8s already, so over a second clear in terms of the fastest lap so far today.
A little bit further back, I'd like to give a call to Jeff Burton, who qualified 9th in the Reardon Racing Lamborghini, picked up a couple of spots. He's now running 7th and 3rd in Pro-Am. Brendan Uribe is the leader in Pro-Am, just ahead of the 4th and final car in the Pro category, the Windward Racing car. And Jeff Burton actually has now picked up another spot over George Kurtz, who has dropped a couple on this lap, and that might be a story to keep an eye on, because George Kurtz suddenly plummeting down our timing and scoring page outside of the top 10 and down to 15th place.
Yeah, lost a couple of spots, and that last lap time was 2 seconds off his previous best, so not the best lap. Let's look at these top speeds through the S's. You can see there, Dynan, that first sector, he's really strong. Look at the advantage he has through there. And it's not all horsepower. You've got to get through the exit of that previous corner to develop that speed. And this is good for Michael Dynan. This will really be a massive shot in the arms in terms of confidence.
Talking about those S's modeled after Maggots and Beckett's at Silverstone, and one corner just feeds into the other. You get behind in one, and that whole section is toast.
It really is. If you get a little bit wide, you've got to identify that immediately. Get it back onto the correct racing line. If you keep fighting it, those S's keep coming at you, and you're going to end up further and further behind.
One thing I've just noticed is you don't see the windshield wipers moving quite as much. I wonder if maybe some of that rain is tapered off. As I say that, you'll still see it on the McLaren. Nice drive here by Russell Ward in the Windward Racing Mercedes. A little bit wide in the back of that shot there, but it is Uribe in the McLaren to the left and Ward in the Mercedes just behind. That is the battle for 4th overall, as you see on the screen.
Just a really tremendous performance. Slips a little bit there coming off a turn 15. Russell Ward starting to put the pressure on. Brand new chassis that the Windward Racing team built up in the last month. So they ran the previous generation Mercedes AMG at the first rounds of the championship. Made this move, coming off a big year already for this team, winning the Rolex 24 back in January. Got big plans ahead. They're going to compete in the DTM championship under the Windward Racing banner with a 2-car operation. Going to be running over in Europe on a full-time basis in the Endurance Championship as well with SRO competition. So lots of races as Venturini piles it down the inside, not quite close enough.
Was that a real attempt to make a pass, or is that just filling the mirrors of an inexperienced competitor?
I think so, but it wasn't really a legitimate shot. He wasn't quite close enough, and Dynan's just going to close the door on that one. He's rolling good speed through that turn 1 apex.
To double back to the George Kurtz story real quick, there is a chance he might just be experiencing transponder issues, because we've seen him pop back up into the 6th spot, and there you see him running. So that is good news. Happy to report that car still on track, and hopefully it is just a transponder issue there. Back on board with George, who has been rounding into form in a GT3 car over the last season or so, and we really saw him excelling last time out at Sonoma, especially in GT America, but had a nice run in the Pro-Am division of GT World Challenge America too, especially in race 2.
Yeah, and I think with that GT America opportunity on the weekend for George to just get a little bit more seat time, get a bit more comfortable. He's a busy man, really a successful businessman, obviously CEO of CrowdStrike, and got a wonderful mentor. We talk about these Pro-Am combinations. Colin Brown is one of the young chargers in our sport that has just done a tremendous job in terms of bringing George Kurtz up to speed in GT3 competition. He won an SRO, a World Challenge Championship back in 2017 in GTSA, the A division, with 9 victories that year, and he just went on a tear. So once he gets that confidence, George Kurtz, he can really perform.
getting word that they are running a backup car in this race, evidently damage to an oil pan in the primary, and luckily, because they are running in multiple series here this weekend, they do have the extra chassis on site. Up front, Jordan Pepper leads Michael Diamond by 2.2 seconds. Giovanni Venturini lurking right behind. I could say it's a tenth of a second behind, but the pictures tell the better story. Closing in, but hasn't been close enough yet. This is where he made that lunge the last time, Calvin. Is he close enough this time?
Well, you can see there, the BMW just stretches it a little bit, and Michael doesn't look vulnerable up into that brake zone. He's had the fastest times here through Sector 1, which includes this brake zone to get through and roll speed here. The car looks really balanced. He's able to get the power down still. Relatively early in the run, of course. But even so, that turn of BMW looks like it's well hooked up here. And let's think ahead. Robbie Foley should have an edge in speed over Michael Dinan with his experience. So what can he do with these K-Pax Lamborghinis a little bit later in this race?
Did get confirmation of a transponder glitch. And so that is why we've seen some sporadic reports of position for the George Kurtz car. Glad it's nothing more serious than that. Love this battle here. Think of two cars more different now that we don't have the Bentley here in GT World Challenge America than this McLaren and the Mercedes, and yet running nearly identical lap times.
He had a chance to chat with Brendan just very briefly here about an hour or so ago, and he had a big smile on his face. He said, yeah, we can do with a bit more horsepower. He's playing the BOP political game, but he said, really solid run. We're just trying to gain experience. They're going to compete at Le Mans this year in a Ferrari, just trying to gain as much track time. He said, I'm taking a bit of a breather from his business world for a season or two, just trying to really maximize his seat time and see how far he can go.
Well, to give an idea of what Brendan has already done this year, third in the 6 hours of Abu Dhabi, finished sixth in the Gulf 12 hours, raced in the 24 hours of Dubai, running here in GT World Challenge America, running GT World Challenge Europe, finished fourth in the Asian Le Mans Series already this year, and as mentioned, that plan in conjunction with Kessel Racing to run at Le Mans, courtesy of the great results in the Asian Le Mans Series. Battle for second heating up once again, though. Giovanni Venturini trying to find a way by, and maybe this is the part of the track where he's going to have to make it happen, given the straight line advantage for the BMW.
Yeah, that Sector 3, as we said, is where the Lamborghini should have the advantage. So Michael's having to start to get a little bit defensive. Late move by Venturini. Wow, that had to be tight there on the left flank of Robbie Foley's BMW. Venturini's kind of in that no man's land, though. He's trying to make a commitment, but not quite far enough alongside, and that's where it gets ready for a little bit of argy-bargy. First one of the year, right?
Took a little while.
It did.
But it's so frustrating, right, when you're in the trailing car and you think you got the pace, but you don't have the straight line speed. Typically, you make that pass in the braking zone, and that's at the end of a straightaway. And so you got to get there with the run, and if you don't have the horsepower, where does the run come from?
And the added frustration is seeing your teammate disappear a little bit down the way, so you want to make a statement. There's always a fierce rivalry, particularly at this level with the pro factory drivers like Venturini, like Andrea Caldarelli. I mean, you want to be the top dog. Even though it's a two-car operation, you want to run as a team. Don't risk anything, but you don't like to see your teammates sort of extending the gap as you're struggling to get right to BMW.
And to your point, maybe it's the pressure from Venturini, but maybe Diamond is laboring just a little bit, 15 minutes or so, 14 minutes or so into this race, but the lead has grown to 4.2 seconds now. Jordan Pepper over that battle for second between Diamond and Venturini. Then you drop back 5 seconds, and you find Brendan Reeb still holding off Russell Ward, at least for the moment. But unchallenged right now is Jordan Pepper, and as impressive and as fast as he is, it's a true Lamborghini ace that will be taking over during the pit stop for K-Pax.
Yeah, they don't have any weak link in that car, that is for sure, because Jordan Pepper has really been a man on a move in terms of his career. And here we see side by side. We'll focus on this for a moment. We'll get back to Pepper and discuss him. But look at Dynam really wide coming off at turn 15. That gives Venturini the run, but then BMW out accelerates him a little bit up to turn 16.
Now the track coming back into the favor of Dinan. He had Venturini the inside, but then the next couple corners are to the right, so that shifts him to the outside, and he's got to settle back in line and do it all over again. Looking up the inside here, Venturini for P2. It's taken a while, but I think he got it done. K-Pax now running 1-2. And with that move complete, well, let's keep an eye on the counterattack here from Dinan. We'll get to Amanda in just a second, but the horsepower of the BMW puts Dinan back to the points.
And that's where Michael Dinan has to stay really poised here in knowing and showcasing what the advantage is that the BMW has. So even if he gets a move like that by Venturini, he knows in that acceleration run he should be able to get the position back. Venturini started to wander across to the left-hand side of the road. Michael started to go with him, and Venturini stopped. That doesn't allow him to then make an additional move. So it's one move, and then you got to stick with it. And that allowed Michael to narrowly make that move.
Oh, but he slid wide just a bit. That opens the door for Venturini to attack again. Can he get the crossover to stick? Giovanni Venturini in the green Lamborghini to the outside of Michael Dinan in the Turner BMW. They've nearly knocked each other's mirrors off, but Venturini finally gets the spot.
That was awesome racing, and hats off to both those drivers in terms of making that move work. And more importantly, for Michael Dinan, he doesn't have the experience of Venturini to be in close quarters like that, not getting too aggressive, not getting too defensive, realizing that there was going to be damage to the race car, and giving him, not giving it to him, but giving him just enough racing room.
Taking a look at the replay, what a great scrap it was, and I think Amanda has found an interested spectator down in the pits. All right, we'll check in with Amanda here in a moment. Watching that replay a second time, you would never believe this is the third GT3 race for Michael Dinan. He looked like a veteran.
Yeah, just the feel there. I mean, I look for small things, and just the feel coming off that corner where he kept opening up his hands to give the Lamborghini enough room so there wasn't contact was really superb racecraft.
Let's check in with Amanda one more time.
Well, guys, I can confirm that the rain has started back up here at pit lane, but Robbie just took his headset off talking to Michael during this race. What are you telling him right now?
Yeah, just explaining the differences in the cars we're racing, the Lamborghinis and our car. He made a great start. We have a little power advantage, so we got to turn one really well. But they negotiate the slow corners very well. So he's dealing with that, changing conditions, doing a great job. See what the weather does. I don't think anybody knows, so thanks.
Robbie Foley has been such a great mentor, but look at that. Dinan has gotten back by and might have something to do with some of the rain we're seeing, because the report is there was a big moment for Giovanni Venturini, and that let Dinan slip right past. By the way, we should note that Russell Ward has been able to make his way by Brendan Uribe. Here is the moment. Wow.
Yeah, that's a big save there. He nearly spared it straight across to that pit wall there. So came off, and when you load it up on these painted curbs, and they're starting to get a little bit slicker, that's when you can run into trouble. So Venturini was trying to get the hammer down, chase after his teammate, just try to get a bit too aggressive on the power there coming off. There's a traction control system that they can adjust by. About 12 settings on the Lamborghini, I believe, to work through the various ranges and how much interrupt is going to do and take away some of the power on these hard acceleration turns like turn 20. They're coming off onto the front straightaway. That was a nice save. That was almost a big one in the fence.
Never good to see the wall coming at you at that rate of speed, but Venturini was able to get himself out of that mess. Unfortunately, all that hard work to find a way past Michael Dinan is for naught. He has to try and do it all over again.
Yeah, and the racetrack has definitely got slicker. Lap times have dropped by about 3 or 4 seconds in terms of what they were running a bit earlier, about 5 minutes ago. So the key now is maintaining pace, keeping the tire loaded, and maintaining tire temperature. If you start to kind of get too conservative and not load the tire anymore, it really just snowballs in effect in terms of how much grip you can have to play with.
Like we've seen this before, but it's not a replay. It's just how evenly matched these two cars are. They continue to be side by side in this part of the track. However, advantage Venturini this time. Looked like there was just a little slip there, a couple of corners back from Dinan that let Venturini get to his flank, and he was able to complete that pass before the track went away from him again.
You'd have to think he's going to be a bit more conservative this time through turn 20 here in terms of how much curb he maybe bites and how hard he gets on the power.
Yes. A bit more copacetic that time for
yes.
Giovanni Venturini, able to make that pass stick. So the Italian driver up to second in the second K-Pax Lamborghini, but nearly 10 seconds behind his teammate in the sister car, driven right now by Jordan Pepper, who has to be smiling behind the face mask of that helmet. We mentioned it before, but going back to the Indianapolis 8-hour last year, conditions like these where it's raining, it's kind of drying, you're on slicks, but you don't know what the grip level is going to be, and he was awesome in that 8-hour race. He's part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli, as well as Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS.
Well, for the guys who excel, the top of the tree guys, it's all about feeling the grip ground and driving the car to 100% of what the track is giving you. For example, Jordan Pepper was running a 208, then he dropped to a 211.9 when the track was a little bit greasy. He immediately dipped back into the 9, so he's feeling the grip. He's one of those kids who has that ability to just feel what's underneath him, maximize it all the time, and have the natural reactions and the instinctive skills to be able to catch the car if it's in a little bit of a slide, having the confidence to do that and running on the knife edge all of the time.
Top speed at the S's there in our race vision, powered by AWS in the Pro-Am class. And Brendan Reeve, who is leading that class at the moment over George Kurtz by about 6 seconds, has the advantage there. It's a high commitment part of this racetrack anyway, but with the grip level being questionable, and you really want to use those curbs in the dry, but in the wet, how much do you want to use them anyway? All this to say, you really have to be committed to kind of extract that kind of top speed in that part of the racetrack right now.
You do, and how they stacked up there on the charts is kind of how they run on the racetrack as well, right. So the two go hand in hand. But again, with these painted curbs, the water doesn't dissipate, it doesn't soak back into the ground as quickly. And when you're on the loaded tire, if you're on the track edge, if you're cutting through an apex on the unweighted part of the car, probably not too much of an issue. But when you get to the outside of the corner, that's where you have to be really, really careful.
I've been impressed by this drive. Jeff Burton, who we're looking at right here, corner speeds at the carousel up on the screen as well in our race vision powered by AWS. And Jeff Burton currently third on that list. This is a big step for Jeff this year, coming out of the GT3, GT4 ranks, where he was third in Pirelli GT4 America Sprint Am last year. Also raced in Sprint X with his co-driver of this season, Vesko Kozarov, but made that leap up to GT3, and I thought showed impressive pace specifically in the GT America races at Sonoma. But looking right at home right here as well. He's been running down George Kurtz the last couple of laps. Let's go on board here. And yeah, Calvin, what do you think about what you're seeing from this onboard shot?
Well, just how smooth you have to be, particularly in these conditions. I mean, when the track's perfectly dry and the grip is there, you can be more aggressive with the steering wheel, with your inputs. But right now, you're just being so much finesse is needed to dance your way through here, not make a mistake, not to get too aggressive on the brakes, and particularly with the acceleration off of these corners, just feeling your way through. And Kurtz knows that they're in the fight for the Pro-Am Championship. Had a Pro-Am win in round 2 at Sonoma, and he just needs to turn this car over. Don't make the critical error. Get the car back to the pit lane when the pit stop window opens. Turn it over to Colin Brown and let him do his work. But right now, this is really important for George Kurtz just to keep it clean. He's hoping that the rain doesn't come down too much more than it has to this point on these slick Pirelli P0s, but he's doing a very nice job.
Technology in these cars are incredible. Look at that screen that he's got to look back. That's a rearward-facing camera, is it not, in the back of this car that you can use with a more unobstructed view than you'd get from a rear-view mirror?
Yeah, absolutely. With all the wings and widgets that these cars have now, aerodynamic, the side view mirrors are sometimes tough to see. So the invention of that rear view facing camera, I think it was Corvette Racing at Le Mans when they used to get attacked by the prototypes, got sick of it. So they came up with some great technology, and it's gradually been adopted by the various manufacturers of the system and the brands that we see represented on the grid here today. So most of these GT3 cars do have that, and it just gives you a great visual aid as to traffic that's coming up behind you.
I think if your car at home has got a backup camera, it can probably give some thanks to this system right here. Just another example of how technology from racing trickles down to the street cars.
On this hill, 130-foot climb up into turn 1, and what that means is you can brake incredibly late. In terms of the normal braking distance, if it was flat compared to an elevation, you just pick up so much grip once you hit the brakes, like a parachute comes out. And that's why people get so brave up into the inside of that corner there making a move.
Two of the DXDT racing cars have found themselves together here on track. Aaron Vogel has just made the pass on David Askew. Askew trying to take that spot back. That is the 19 car around the 63 car. And just up the road, Taylor Hadler for Racers Edge Motorsports a couple of laps ago made a pass for 9th overall, 5th in Pro-Am around Fred Pordown, who had such a strong weekend with Jan Haywen back at Sonoma. A little bit further down the order than I think they would like at this point.
Yeah, they lead the Pro-Am Championship right now, and Fred didn't have a great baptism with this championship here last year. Crashed the car in qualifying that he shared with Max Root. They ran in the AM category last year, but didn't seem to phase him. He came back with a lot of confidence, put in some really strong performances, even against drivers with a lot more experience than he has. So he's willing to get up on the wheel, but I think Taylor Hagler, once again, demonstrating a superb performance. This is a home track. She sits there a couple of positions ahead of Erin Vogel, but she and Erin had a tremendous battle in round 2 at Sonoma for the final podium spot there, which Taylor just won out.
That was a ton of fun to watch, and Erin would love to relive that here in a moment if she could find a way by Fred Pordat. So it's Pordat in the Porsche, then Erin Vogel in the purple and red Mercedes. David Askew just behind in the red and silver Mercedes. Both Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evos from the DXDT Racing team, which also fields the car for George Kurtz and Colin Brown that we were riding on board with a moment ago. Erin Vogel, another one making the step up from Pirelli GT4 America a year ago, where she co-drove with Michael Cooper, who stays with her in both a coaching and co-driving capacity in this next step in her career.
I think that's the comfort factor, right, in terms of you need some things that stay the same, whether it's the team, the car, the class, or your co-driver. So I think with Michael Cooper, so much success. He's won 4 World Challenge Championships over the years, one of the most talented drivers we have in our paddocks, and to have him driving alongside you, that's the great guide that you need to take you to that next level, tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing.
Let's get down to Amanda, who's got an update for us.
Well, welcome to the Fanatec GT World Challenge, powered by AWS Season 2 of the McLaren team Inception. Ali Milroy, as you guys approach the rest of this race, what strategy are you guys going to have during the driver change?
A lot of that will be decided by the weather. You know, as you know, it's kind of on-off. The forecast was to be heavy rain all day, and we haven't really had it yet. So, yeah, we'll just see what the weather does. The plan at the moment was obviously just to do the standard mandatory stop in our 10-minute window, but if it gets heavier than this and we need to pit early for wets, then we'll have an extra stop for wets. But it's trying to balance that. You know, do you take the time in the pits versus the time that you then gain on track from putting the wets on? So just see what the weather does. Thank you. Cool.
I think the other key is you could certainly come in early, but the other thing is typically you try and bring him in and get the pro in the car as soon as possible. But if you're getting close to maybe it's going to rain and you want to throw different tires at it, they may elect to keep the AMs out a little bit longer to see if the rain does indeed come.
Fight for 3rd overall and in Pro-Am. Michael Dinan, after the stirring start to this race, has faded just a bit, or maybe more appropriately, Russell Ward has come on strong. He raced in difficult conditions just a couple of weeks ago in the GT World Challenge Europe race at Monza, doing the same here, and has run down Dinan. So now it's Mercedes versus BMW for the final step of the podium, with nearly a half hour of this 90-minute race complete.
And again, just great to see just really come on strong, gradually getting more and more seat time, more and more experience in these very conditions. Ran at the Spa 24-hour race last year where he had inclement weather, and just gaining experience and confidence at the same time. And you know, they got the new car, so it's a little bit more edgy, got a bit more pace in that race car this weekend. And Philip Ellis will start from the pole for round 4 of our championship, the second race here this weekend tomorrow.
You mentioned the new car. It is a different chassis than they ran at Sonoma, fully upgraded to Evo spec. It was the previous generation aero package and a couple other bits and bobs that they ran at Sonoma to open the season, but looking very stout here. Russell Ward starting to run down Michael Dinan. That last lap, they ran nearly identical lap times, but the previous couple laps he was really making some inroads.
Yeah, and I think this is really, if you're being realistic about it, you would expect with the experience and the talent level of K-Pax, the Lamborghinis and their driving squad, they should go out and pretty much dominate. But I think it's going to be fascinating between these two teams, Turner Motorsports and Winward, who can pick up that final step on the podium and how close they can gradually get up to those Lamborghinis by the mid part of the season potentially.
And I think a lot of it comes down to these two drivers as Russell Ward takes a peek to the inside of Dinan, who slips wide. And my goodness, Giovanni Venturini's got to be thinking, what do I have to do to have it that easy? Well, maybe I spoke too soon, because here comes Dinan back to the inside. That was awfully close, but backs out of it and moves Ward up one more position. He's now 3rd overall, as well as in class. But back to what we were discussing, the two pros in these cars, Philip Ellis and Robbie Foley, have extensive GT3 experience. Their resumes are tremendous. These two drivers, Russell Ward to a lesser extent, but certainly Michael Dinan, very much learning what GT3 racing is all about. And I think their development is what's going to be really fascinating a little bit further. So, yeah, that's the one we're going to have to keep an eye on, these two drivers, for the rest of this season. I think we've got a little bit of an update here on our lone AM competitor in the field at the moment, JC Sada behind the wheel. Remember, they had such a difficult run of things at Sonoma with the practice crash. There's a good look at the AF Corsa run car. Practice crash for JC Sada that led to some serious damage to that car. They were able to get out and complete both races, but a brand new chassis and a brand new outlook. I think they're really excited about what's to come, especially with the promise of perhaps some more M-Class entries coming a little bit later in the season. Yeah, it's fun to see AF Corsa here, one of the top, they're the kind of the pseudo factory team for Ferrari, and so to see them here is really great. And I think Conrad Grunwald is really potentially, I'm going to be interested to see how well he does this year. Talking to him this weekend, he has a lot of drifting competition and background. He said if it rains, look out, I should be very comfortable in those conditions. So this is again going to be a gradual step-by-step process in terms of getting this Ferrari more towards the sharp end of the field. But Conrad's going to be a great coach and a mentor for Sada, who started the race here today. Conrad does have some experience in this paddock going back a number of years, has run some pretty big events over the course of his career. JC Sada, though, with a lot of Ferrari challenge experience as well, and making that big step up here to GT3. Over a half hour into this race, closing in on the pit stop window opening up here before too much longer. But taking a peek back at our race leader, it is Jordan Pepper getting it done. The lead has not grown a whole lot in recent laps over Giovanni Venturini, but the South African holds the advantage now by right around 10 seconds as he comes by to complete the 15th lap of the race. In about 10 seconds behind, you'll find Venturini, who has been able to pull out a gap now over the chasing Russell Ward and Michael Dinan, who had that great start, led some laps and has slipped back down to fourth. This is Venturini in the second K-Pax Lamborghini. Yeah, and I think Jordan at this stage is probably just not taking any risk. I mean, I think there's an eye at the sky right now in terms of that pit stop window will open up in about 13 minutes, 40 to 50 minutes into this race is when you've got to make that mandatory stop. And again, what you don't want to do is pit and then suddenly the floodgates open in terms of the rain and you've got to come back down pit lane. So it wouldn't surprise me, unless we suddenly see some clear radar, that a lot of these teams will elect to stay out as long as possible so they don't have to make a second pit stop here today. Yeah, that's a great point. Usually we see the Pro-Am cars come in this race one as early as possible to get the Pro as much seat time as they can, maximize that performance. But as we don't know what the weather holds in store for us, there might be an incentive to delay that decision as long as possible. And the other thing is, I'm not sure how many other teams are equipped. I mean, tire warmers are allowed this year, but right now you really need a set of wets and a set of slicks are ready to go. So I'm not sure how many teams have the resources to have both available in the tire ovens, or whether they're doing a bit of a juggle, kind of toasting one set and then the other. Definitely a possibility. This is the third place running Mercedes. Russell Ward behind the wheel. Philip Ellis will be strapping in when that driver change does occur. Michael Dinan behind. Turner Motorsport. BMW. Last year of the M6 GT3. BMW with the new M4 model GT3 car coming to fit in with the new 2020 GT3 regs. That's very exciting. And one of the newer GT3 cars out there is this McLaren 720S GT3. It is Inception Racing by Optimum. Brendan Uribe driving this car, and we heard from Ollie Milroy a little while ago. I'm sure he's chomping at the bit, ready to see what he can do, maybe make some inroads in the cars just up the road. Yeah, and I talked to Brendan a little bit, and he said he was running this McLaren Spec Championship, and that's where they had driver coaches, and that's where he met Ollie and the foundation group here in terms of suddenly teaming up together. Brendan obviously wanted to pursue racing. It's a bit more of a passion than just kind of a one-off, little taste and foray into it. So he certainly has the resources to do it right, and the main thing he wants to do is just get as much seat time, as we said earlier in the show, in terms of expanding his knowledge of different tracks, different conditions, different series and rules,
and just really trying to fast-track his learning process.
And he is the Pro-Am leader. Second place is this car, George Kurtz, driving for DXDT Racing. It's been a nice, smooth run for him, and I bet he'll take it after the way his season started. Race 1, lap 1 at Sonoma, got tagged, went
His
around,
teammate.
and car over for what it's worth. The team owner, DXDT Racing, David Askew, and really struggled in that first race, but bounced back in a big way. He and Colin Brown with a win in race 2, which I'm sure put some form of salve on the wound after disappointment on Saturday back in Sonoma.
The dinner conversations like that. Both groups get along so well, and it just seems like happened a couple of times last year. They were like magnets on the racetrack at certain points, and had a couple of collisions, but dusted themselves off, regrouped, reset, and had a tremendous Sunday in Sonoma.
Yep, second place in the Pro-Am category. Third place is this car. That is Jeff Burton behind the wheel of that machine. Really remarkable how comfortable he's become and how quickly with this GT3 spec Lamborghini. His first real foray into pro-level racing was in a Super Trofeo car out of the Lamborghini stable, and he said to me at Sonoma, I realized pretty quick I had bitten off perhaps a little more than I can chew. It certainly was a big bite, and he went back to school. He went to GT4 and had a number of really strong years there, got better and better, honing that racecraft, but it was that experience with the Super Trofeo car that gave him all the knowledge he needed to know that when he wanted to go GT3 racing, Lamborghini was where he wanted to be.
Yeah, and I think they made the move around, right? They ran the Audi, then they had the Aston Martin, now he's in a Lamborghini. Admittedly, you said he's had Lamborghini platform experience before, but I don't know what it is. I guess I'm kind of amazed that guys like Fred Pordad, like Jeff Burton, successful businessmen, but they seem to have that confidence that they're not intimidated. They get into the deep end, and they'll have a moment and they'll dust themselves off and seem to come back even stronger, which is remarkable. You see some young drivers that can really knock them off their balance a little bit for a long time, but these guys seem to be able to bounce back very quickly.
And not sure if it's just being used to success in the business world that maybe gives them the right mindset for it. That's a good question, and one that maybe we should put to a couple of these AMs in the Pro-Am lineups, but in many cases they're AMs in name only. Yeah, they don't make their living driving a race car, but they take their racing incredibly seriously.
See the sparks there coming off the CrowdStrike entry as George Kurtz barreled through the S's there. That's just the rub blocks on the side of the bodywork there on the side skirts to protect everything getting damaged too much to the underside of the car. So these little blocks that are in there kind of intentionally going to grind away a little bit, and they can be replaced.
Fred Pordad is who we're looking at here. He's about to come under some pressure from Aaron Vogel. You can see up the road just moments ago coming through the shop was Taylor Hagler in the Racer's Edge car. So she's been able to make that pass in the last couple of laps. Moved Taylor Hagler now into 5th in Pro-Am. Fred Pordad falling into the clutches of Aaron Vogel. And I think we're going to watch this Mercedes fly when Michael Cooper gets in following the round of pit stops.
Yeah, they're gradually getting there. I spoke to Michael yesterday. He said, we've got a bit of work to do. He said, we're just trying to get on top of the car and get it dialed in. But, you know, if you give Michael Cooper the tools, he will get the job done. Because, again, he's had success. He's driven with some big teams, some big manufacturers. But I really hope that he gets to even a higher level in this sport, because I really believe in his abilities.
I'm right there with you. Hey, we're closing in on the pit stop window.
Up here in a minute, and sometimes it's not always the leader who gets the first shot at it. It doesn't have to be the leader who's the first to get that opportunity. As soon as that clock winds down to 50 flat, 49.99 essentially, or 59.9 or whatever you want to call it, then you can come down into pit lane. So there was a rule in place about 3 or 4 years ago where it had to be the lap after that so that the leaders were the first to have the opportunity. But in conditions were changing, that can sometimes be very critical.
Yeah, so what do you think? Put your strategy hat on. We talked about the possible value in keeping the AM in the car and delaying the decision on what tires to put on as long as possible to make the most educated decision. But is there someone who's going to say, you know what, we're going to roll the dice, let's put our pro in and make hay while the sun figuratively is shining, because it sure ain't shining now.
Well, you're only talking about a 10-minute window in terms of whether the rain comes. So if they're looking at the radar and they believe it, it's like, okay, we may indeed see rain before the checkered flag, but if it's not going to come in the next 10 minutes, when we might as well get the fast driver in and make that change. But if there's a chance, any chance whatsoever, that the rain is going to increase here during that next 10 minutes, you're much better to wait, maybe give up a few tenths or a few seconds with the slightly slower driver in the car right now, but not having to come down pit lane once again.
Oh, Vogel took a peek there and had to back out of it. That would have been a high commitment place to try and make that pass, and she was coming from a long way back, so maybe that was more a case of just showing the nose, trying to get into Fred's head just that little bit. By the way, we are getting reports that K-Pax might be looking like they're getting ready, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as Vogel goes on the attack around the outside, and look at the rain coming down. That makes the call easy.
Yeah, and for the Mercedes, it looks like it's more compliant in these conditions, giving Aaron the confidence at least to really push a little bit harder than Fred. Fred has backed out of it a little bit, not feeling the car right now, not feeling confident that it's underneath him, but need to make some adjustments. Start working on that TC, crank it up a little bit. And if this rain is going to increase here, now right now you see there Jordan Pepper coming to pit entry, that's turn 20. Could have elected to come down, but they're just trying to wait it out a little bit, see if this rain is going to increase. Is it time to move over to the wet weather Pirelli P0s, or are you going to stay on these slick tires?
And then does K-Pax cover by going with the opposite strategy for the second place car?
They
and
do.
Indeed, Giovanni Venturini comes down into the pit lane. It looks like the Russell Ward car, Michael Dinan car rather, was right behind as well. So Turner and K-Pax both coming to pit lane here as the rain starts to fall. Amanda is standing by.
Well, guys, as a 6 car makes its way into the pit lane here, the minimum pit stop for drivers here at COTA is 77 seconds. During that pit chain, there's going to be 3 major things that are going to happen. The driver change is going to happen. Refuel is going to happen. And most importantly, in this condition, the tire change is going to happen. I talked to a representative at K-Pax. They are going to put on wet tires. It was slicks up until 15 seconds ago, guys. But as you can see here, the wet tires are going to the number 6 Lamborghini.
I think there may be a strategy here. Are they staying on those hot slicks or not? No, here come the wets. You were right, Amanda. So it's a bit of a late one here. So this may delay them. They're pretty late in getting those wets over the wall. So there's a bit of communication going on there in terms of making that ultimate decision. And they're going with it. They believe this rain is going to stay with us and going to increase to the point you're going to need wet weather tires on. For the 3 car, they've stayed out there to just try and feel out this situation a little bit longer. Tell you what, though, Michael Dinan did a great job by closing up on the back of Venturini when the conditions got worse. So BMW working well in these conditions. And Robbie Foley said this is when the car works really well in these drying kind of half-wet conditions. And a switch over there in terms of, we talked about the delay and the thought process and do we want wet tires on the Lamborghini. That cost them track position there.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That delay in making that decision was what made the difference there in the pit lane. I assume that Turner was able to go onto the wets. We're getting a report that maybe there was a car that slid off Russell Ward maybe a little bit before that pit stop. I think this car also, reports are, took a slide off the track a moment ago. Look at that! He barely went to power, and around goes the back of Brendan Iribe. They just 700 horsepower on the slicks. Yeah, exactly. Not where not the situation you want, but around he goes, and pretty clearly the call was to come in early. That was the right choice.
Yeah, and I don't think it was even acceleration there, Ryan. I think he just loaded the car to the point that the grip wasn't there, and with traction control, it's not working in yaw, as we call it, as the car's loaded up through the corner. It's just working under acceleration when you're trying to use power. So just committed with a bit too much rolling speed. There wasn't the grip there, just a slow, lazy spin. But that's how treacherous it is right now. So the real key is going to be, what was Jordan Pepper's in-lap like on those slick tires compared to Robbie Foley's out-lap? Could that make a difference in track position, even though he had a nice, healthy margin of about 10 seconds or so?
Driver change to Caldarelli is happening now. No hesitation here. Straight on to the wet weather tires. Russell Ward also in the pits for Windward Racing. But, yeah, that in-lap how compromised was it given the conditions? That is the question.
He had to be tiptoeing around, and we talk about the tire warmers. These wet weather tires don't run at the same sort of peak temperatures, so probably running these wet weather tires about 50 degrees cooler than the slick, so that's the adjustment you have to make in the tire ovens. Otherwise, those wet weather tires, which are a softer compound, and obviously the construction and the tread blocks that are on them to give you the grip in wet conditions, they'd literally be, the rubber would be falling off the carcass if you put them up to dry temperature specs. But you can see there, 3-car out, Caldarelli, a nice healthy gap. Foley's not even on the front straightaway, so no real advantage there in terms of that extra lap that Jordan Pepper had to do. And that's really the skill of Jordan Pepper in terms of getting that car back to pit lane without losing too much time.
We've been mentioning that throughout the broadcast, just how good Jordan Pepper is in conditions like these. So maybe that makes that decision to let him be the guinea pig and test out one extra lap a little bit longer, an easier one.
Yeah, look at this, 33 cars in and out. Philip Ellis should be behind the wheel of that right now, so
that was able to leapfrog the BMW as well. And Corey Lewis currently shown in 7th. There's a couple cars in the pit lane, so he'll be able to come through a little bit, but he's the one that stepped into the car that had been driven by Giovanni Venturini.
Well, Ellis should be a monster in this Mercedes in these conditions with his experience. So I tell you what, certainly the number 3 car is the advantage right now with Caldarelli right behind the wheel. But if there was a yellow or a reset, I think he could have some stiff competition right on his tail.
With the rain coming down like this, it's going to be difficult conditions. And the man who was out there in those conditions just a few moments ago is Jordan Pepper, and he is with Amanda.
Well, Jordan, on your last lap, the rain really picked up there. How difficult was it getting that Lambo back here to pit lane?
Yeah, it picked up actually the lap before, and we thought, should we box? And we stayed out just to see, because if the rain were to stop, then we had to stay on slick. So we did the extra lap, and man, down the back straight, I was aquaplaning 4th gear. The team was telling me, just bring it home. And yeah, in the end, crazy stint. It was so hard to tell, always being the leader with the rain. But yeah, the team gave me an incredible car. We really turned it around from qualifying. Obviously, I was on pole where we struggled a bit with the balance with Andrea, and yeah, the car was a dream to drive. So we got the best in the business out there now. It took over from me, and I'm sure he's going to do an amazing job.
And it was an amazing job from Jordan. Look at Caldarelli running a little bit wide. Just goes to show how difficult these conditions are, and how tough is it to go out your first laps of your stint as the rain is starting to come down and the water level is starting to build.
Well, I mean, when you got a margin like they have, Andrea can afford to be a little bit more cautious. And you could see him there, once the car started to slip a little bit, rather than trying to, pinch the car and keep it on the racetrack, you just let it float, let it have its head a little bit. You don't want to add the steering input if you're already starting to feel the car slip and slide a little bit. So this is where the experience comes in. We've had various conditions over the course of the race weekend as we see Foley here with a big charge looking to the inside of Ellis. Flicks to the outside, so that BMW is working well in these conditions. Foley's won in conditions like this with this platform before in other championships, so he'll feel right at home. I felt that this could really be their strong suit here in these conditions this weekend.
That'll bring a smile to Will Turner's face. It was an admittedly difficult weekend at Sonoma. The car just did not show pace. They couldn't get it in a happy place all weekend long. But I think if he can make up one more spot here, this is the fight for 2nd overall, as well as in the pro class. There might be tacos on the menu tonight for the Turner boys to celebrate a nice comeback here the 2nd weekend of the season. George Kurtz just now coming to the pit lane.
Yes, they run it down there. They were just trying to wait and see. You'd think that you'd want to get Colin Brown in there as soon as possible, but they were using that strategy we talked about, wait and see what the weather does. So the amount of rain out there, I don't know why you wouldn't elect to pit, because the last couple of laps is pretty much, you couldn't, even if it was going to dry out, I don't think you could afford, if it stopped raining, it would be a huge gamble to put Colin out there on slick tires.
I don't see a driver change.
Well, maybe Colin's already been in, and now he's Colin in the car, and he's come back in 2nd.
Maybe they gambled and put slicks on.
That would make more sense.
But when from that onboard shot, there was clearly no effort from the driver to get out of the car. That looked just like a tire change, and there was no waiting or no refueling. So that must be a 2nd stop then for this car.
timing and scoring to cycle through.
Yeah, at the moment it's still shown as only having made that one stop. But
It's got that transponder issue, so I wonder if
yes.
that's maybe why we're not seeing accurate information.
That's a good point. That's too bad because
That's
George,
Colin. You can see in the rearview mirror, that's Colin's eyes there inside the helmet. So certainly the driver change was done earlier, so we didn't see one then. So you may be right. Maybe they elected to gamble on slicks, and Colin said no something.
Oh, look at all that opposite lock from Colin there. Here's a battle. 91 is Kozarov.
This will be fun. Him
Yep.
and Jan Halen.
They don't have any history, do they, Calvin?
No. These guys shouldn't be buying coffee next to each other in the morning, let alone racing beside each other.
And yet they find each other weekend after weekend. It is something else, whether it's on track or in the pits or what have you. A little bit of rivalry is a healthy thing, though, for a racing series. So let's have some fun with this. Battle for third in Pro-Am. Kozarov is in, actually, is a little bit further down. No, that is right. It is third in Pro-Am. Kozarov has it. Halen trying to get around. You would think advantage Porsche in conditions like these.
Porsche's always renowned for putting the power down well in these sort of conditions, so he does get the acceleration done up to the inside. But Vesco's going to give it his all. He's a tough competitor, which I love to see. I mean, these two guys have given us so much fun over the last couple of seasons in terms of whether they're fighting each other or other guys on the racetrack.
Halen makes the pass into turn one. Kozarov tries to come back and can't get the retaliation move completed. So advantage to the Belgian, who is now domiciled in Florida. Again, Halen really found a home at Wright Motorsports. He's been plug and play with them. Anytime they need someone to fill in or do an endurance race or help coach up their drivers in their Porsche Cup program, he is a big part of all of that. And when Max Root couldn't race here the second time last year, he had a commitment over at Le Mans. They drafted Halen in, and Fred stepped up to Pro-Am for the first time and didn't miss a beat.
Jan is one of the best in terms of what you can get done behind the wheel of one of these Porsches. And again, how do drivers stay in the game? Well, I think Jan has really showcased that he'll do whatever it takes. He was running the VW Spec Series a few years ago. And, just willing to coach, be at the racetrack all of the time, network, and get these opportunities. And drivers recognize that if they're trying to learn their craft, then having someone alongside them like Jan Halen will give them the success they're looking for.
To clean up on how the leaders sorted themselves out after the pit stops, it is Caldarelli leading from Ward by about 14 or 15 seconds. Now it's 13.7, as a matter of fact, between Caldarelli and Ward. Robbie Foley runs third in the Turner BMW. Corey Lewis is down in the fourth spot, and it's a considerable margin behind the rest of the Pro Class runners. And that was in the green K-Pax Lamborghini, the number 6 car that had the delay on the pit stop. And just goes to show how perfect you need to be in the pits. You can't afford to be indecisive.
Right.
Because as far as we can tell, unless there was an issue on track that we did not see, that is what has taken him out of contention. Remember, he was second coming into that round of stops.
Yeah, and it should be Ellis behind the wheel of the 33. So I think
Good
our
point.
timing and scoring is showing Ward, who should have started this race and did start this race. So it should be Philip Ellis behind the wheel right now. And there you see him just drifting that Mercedes off this corner, and has a lot of experience over in Europe running in these conditions. Robbie Foley's not letting him get away, but not keeping the heat on like he was a little bit earlier.
That pass not for position. That's Drew Stavely at the Ian Lacey Racing Aston Martin. That's a little hydroplane there from Philip Ellis. Drew Stavely did tell us that they did get a couple of test days done here at COTA. One of them was in the rain, so they were not unhappy to see the forecast.
Yeah, and it's a big learning curve for Ian Lacey Racing, Frank Gannett, Drew Stavely. Had so much success in GT4 competition over the last handful of years, but this is a big step up for them. They get great support from Aston Martin Racing. I believe they got 3 mechanics and engineers here working with them this weekend, but big learning curve, steep learning curve, as now we see Foley starting to heap the pressure on Philip Ellis. Looks to the outside there through 13, trying to find the grip. And sometimes there's more grip offline there because the racing line is so polished, doesn't have the grip, and Foley's working him over right now.
Yeah, that's your traditional rain line, isn't it? Just rim riding the outside, staying out of the polished area, staying out of the oil, and other fluids that race cars tend to drop over the course of a race weekend. A lot of pressure here and not much visibility running that close behind the Mercedes just up the road.
That's the key point, Ryan. You talk about visibility, even with that rear view facing camera with all of the spray, you really can't identify exactly where the driver is. So there's a lot of trust going on between these two drivers right now, not to get into each other as they go side by side through some of these corners.
35 minutes remaining. Another pit stop here for DXDT Racing, and another case of a team rolling the dice. Michael Cooper sent out on slicks. I am amazed he has held on to it as long as he has. Now they make the change to the P0 wet weather tires from Pirelli and send Michael Cooper back out into the fray.
Yeah, and these two dicing out here, Ellis and Foley, has really allowed Caldarelli to scamper away a little bit. He's now built 3 seconds more on that one lap alone. So Ellis getting super defensive here is really costing him lap time. And the battle for the win without a reset with a caution or a big mistake by Caldarelli, they're giving him a handy margin to work with 34 minutes to go.
Those top speeds you see at the S's, that is since the rain has started to fall. And look at the difference between the numbers that we were seeing earlier in the race in dry conditions. That's how careful the drivers have to be picking their way through. Still awfully fast though. Jan Heylen, 113.7 miles an hour, his top speed through the S's.
Yeah, about 15 seconds a lap slower, so 20 corners on the racetrack. Some of that on the straightaway, but you're losing about 7 or 8 tenths through each corner here collectively, so that's a massive difference.
Now we see Madison Snow bring the Zelus Motorsport Lamborghini to the pit lane. I wonder if that's a tire change there for them as well. A couple of guys maybe not quite as fortunate from the strategy perspective. Hard to say. The weather forecast has been difficult to believe because we see one thing and we get another. That's been the case the last couple days. But it's pretty straightforward from here on out, it looks like. That is a lot of standing water on this racetrack.
Yeah, and even if it was to stop now, I think you're going to be staying out there on these wets for the final 30 minutes or more. So now it's all about management. I mean, the key is don't burn the tires down. Think about a reset for Robbie Foley. He's got to be smart here. I mean, he's not going to catch Caldarelli on pace, but he's just got to stay in touch with Philip Ellis and maybe have a stronger car towards the end. Work with some of the settings that you can in the car with the traction control, the brake bias settings and roll bars and stuff like that. Soften the car up if need be. Just try and get it as compliant as you can be and try and figure out a way to climb that extra step on the podium this afternoon.
Let's ride on board here with Colin Brown around Circuit of the Americas. Watch his hands as the rain continues to fall here in Austin.
Those little twitches where you see that quick correction, they're big moments. They are big moments.
Colin and George last year teamed up to run the Total 24 Hours of Spa. You'll recall that there was a lot of rain in that race. They were running a Mercedes. SPS Automotive, I believe, the team that fielded their entry there. They intend to be back once again this year. A lot of that race run in wet conditions. And for Colin, it's an old hat. But for George, all of these laps are part of that learning curve. Look at that, sawing on the wheel. Colin Brown just fighting this Mercedes, trying to keep it pointed the right direction.
Yeah, just constant correction. You're just constantly up on your toes, feeling the grip, trying to maximize it. You're going to step over it. You can't just drive the car perfectly in terms of the threshold with the conditions changing this quickly, but having the skill and the belief that you can catch it and not make a critical error and spin the car or something when you do have to do one of those catches.
We saw him take his right hand off the wheel on the straightaway and make an adjustment. What do you think that was? Is that TC? Is that brake bias?
TC, there's typically a little dial on the steering wheel itself, so it could have been a brake bias adjustment or maybe an anti-roll bar setting that they can adjust. That's basically the roll of the car in terms of letting it roll a bit more, being a bit more compliant, not like a flat kind of skimboard in these conditions. You want the car to roll a little bit and find the grip, find the bite.
There are so many adjustments available to the drivers in the car. It's an art form, knowing how to make those adjustments in real time to keep the car balanced the way that you like it. I mean, that's as important as what you're doing with the steering wheel and the pedals, especially in these kinds of conditions.
I think it was Ian Lacey who said they got the manuals for the Aston Martin, and it was like 150 pages or something. And
Drew Stavely told me this is not a real-time adjustment, but on the shocks coming from the GT4 car, that they ran the Mustang last year, they have something like 10 times as many shock settings on a GT3 car as they did on the GT4 Mustang. The manual is the biggest paperweight you'll ever find. It's amazing how much goes into knowing all the different systems on these cars.
Sometimes it can be too much because you only have limited amount of track time and a limited amount of engineering staff to pour through all the data. So sometimes keeping it simple will get you a better result. But nonetheless, technology is amazing. The way they can digest that data now is so much quicker with some of the systems they have in place.
It's one of the reasons these manufacturers embed engineers with their customer teams. You need to have the specialist knowledge to be able to get the most out of the cars, and we're seeing that expertise on display. It is indeed Philip Ellis behind the wheel of this Windward Racing Mercedes. That is currently the second place car on the road, and he's been able to build a bit of a gap over Robbie Foley, who was breathing down his neck just a few laps ago.
Yeah, settled back in again, found his comfort spot, and maybe Robbie's working on his setup as well. But looking at their lap times pretty evenly on that last lap, within a few hundredths of each other. So see Robbie there, a little twitch there as he comes through.
I'll tell you, the fight we might have on our hands before too much longer. Ollie Milroy is reeling in Corey Lewis. That is for fourth overall. Not a battle for class position. Milroy is the Pro-Am leader by a pretty handy margin over Ian Haywood at the moment, over 10 seconds as they run. But Haywood is another one to keep an eye on. He's been awfully fast. However, Milroy running as fast as anybody, just about, within a second of what our race leaders are doing as far as the best lap times are concerned. And Milroy running times on par with all the cars ahead of him the last time by.
Yeah, a ton of experience. Comes from the UK where these conditions are not abnormal, of course. So started his career in karts at 5 years old, went through British Karting Championships, Formula BMW, a bunch of single-seater stuff. And then in 2012, he made the move over to GT racing. He's also a precision driver in movies. Been in Mission Impossible, Transformers, so some big stuff there. And I think he's found a great partner here in Brendan Arieve, and I think they're going to go places this year.
Former class winner at the Gulf 12 Hours GT4. Some good runs in the Asian Le Mans Series over the years, all driving McLaren equipment. And like you said, has a real partnership, it seems like, with Brendan. These two have been trotting the globe, busy already. They raced in the Asian Le Mans Series. They had a couple other races in the Gulf. Yes, indeed. And there goes Milroy to the inside of Corey Lewis. That is fourth position overall.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether the team's experience in British GT racing in conditions like this, a lot of it is down to obviously driver skill and confidence, but also the electronic aids and having those dialed in and knowing how to work them and having the car work well under these conditions. Like coming off this corner, just getting the power down to the road with the traction control system. Look how he accelerates away from Corey Lewis there. Some
real experience at the helm for this Optimum Motorsport team. Boss Linder's a great driver in his own right, a multi-time FIA GT champion. Did every Friday free practice during, I think it was the 2005 F1 season for Minardi, before going into sports car racing out of single-seaters, and then has done a lot of sports car and touring car racing before taking up posts for Aston Martin, and then more recently McLaren Automotive, and now helping to run this Inception by Optimum team. That's a lot of experience that he brings to the table, and certainly having that at the helm to guide some of these decisions is key to the success that they've had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have the administrative skills and the people skills to have that leadership position along with a racing background, that is the perfect combination.
And this car, by the way, this chassis, was set to run GT World Challenge Europe last year. COVID made that an impossibility. It ended up running the Silverstone 500 British GT race, but that's it. Other than that, it's only been used for testing. But they've sent it over here. It's going to be headquartered in nearby Buda, Texas. And that's going to be their headquarters in the States as they plan to be at the rest of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS rounds yet this season, in conjunction with the busy schedule running GT Open as well as GT World Challenge Europe this year as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy year for a number of these drivers who are running multiple programs, different organizations, particularly some of the factory drivers. Now that the COVID situation has got a little bit easier in terms of the doors are opening a little bit at least, which is obviously great news for everyone out there, particularly our fans. Hope we get fans back at the racetrack at the next round of our championship at VIR, which will be great to see. But it's certainly allowing some of these programs to, like Winwood, they had massive plans last year. I think they were going to compete like 60 races globally. That obviously got curtailed to a certain extent because of the COVID travel regulations.
Definitely getting easier with entrance to the EU now. Much more streamlined with the vaccination. That news here recently, certainly welcome news. There is our leader going through lap traffic. How about Jacob Abel behind the wheel of that NSX we're looking at right here? Hasn't been in a GT car since last October. He's got a burgeoning open wheel career. Last couple of weekends he was racing in Indy Pro 2000, which is part of the road to Indy, getting to IndyCar. A couple of races at Barber Motorsports Park 2 weekends ago, and then last weekend was racing on the streets of St. Pete, and now right back behind the wheel of a GT car for his first ever GT race, and he's got to do it in this.
Yeah, really nice young man. I've known his dad, Billy, for a long time, and he's always had a keen passion for racing, and now his young son is really doing some tremendous things. He's going to be running here, VIR on the Glen, and to Indy, where Dakota Dickerson and Taylor Hegler will be kind of the three driver squad there. So exciting times, but you know, you get out there in these conditions in a GT car with a roof over your head. The visibility factor too for me was huge in terms of driving a single seater in the rain versus a windshield and the fogging issues and everything else.
Well, down amongst the conditions is Amanda, and I think she's got an update on the Inception team.
Well, the team manager, Baz Landers, has been watching this McLaren just take down. And why do you feel that the McLaren performs so well here in the rain?
Well, I mean, it's multiple reasons. First of all, the McLaren has always been good in the rain. I think we have some drivers who manage quite well in the rain as well. I mean, Ollie Milroy, he's from the UK, and it rains a lot down there. So, yeah, but I think also we have a good engineering crew, and we sort of anticipated a little bit of rain, so we made a compromise, which probably helps now.
Great to hear from Boss. Great addition to this paddock. Wonderful to have the car. And then again, we mentioned it at the open of the show, McLaren joining the global Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS, which you can score points towards this championship as a manufacturer based on class and how many cars are in your class. And it draws on results from GT World Challenge America, Europe, Asia, and now Australia, the new SRO championship that just got started earlier this year. And McLaren relatively recently announcing that they are on board as an additional manufacturer, just bolstering the prestige of this global world challenge that continues to grow year on year.
Yeah, and I think what Baz was relating to in terms of the compromise on the setup, that means that they went with a little bit softer setup, maybe more downforce. It's tricky when you add downforce with the rear wing to balance it with the front end of the car. There's not so much adjustment on the front splitter and the dive planes, but maybe run a little bit more downforce in the car, a little bit softer spring package and things like that, so that if it was ultimately dry, you're going to be suffering in terms of compromising your potential speed. But when it gets like these conditions where it's pretty wet, that allows the Ollie to do his job.
This is a battle for position, it would appear, with Jacob Abel in the NSX fighting with Ryan Dial. And it's quite possible, timing and scoring was saying at least, that Abel was ahead the last time by and had made a pass on Dial. But Dial now appears to have made that spot back. So they are fighting, as mentioned, for the 6th position in Pro-Am and the 10th position overall.
We see that Corey Lewis has dropped down the order a little bit in the number 6 K-Pax Lamborghini, and just got word from the team that he's got no ABS, so that'll be massive for him in these conditions to not be locking up brakes and flying off the racetrack. So ABS in these conditions, really big safety net for these drivers to utilize on the entry of these corners.
And even in ideal conditions, GT3 cars are designed with the idea that you're going to have ABS in mind, and it's not just like turning it off and okay, now you just can't lock up the brake by modulating your pressure. You really are at a severe handicap, even if it was dry, when the ABS goes out.
Well, just your whole braking pressure and performance there into the brake zones is totally different. So before you could just grenade the brakes, admittedly in these conditions you've got to be a little bit softer into the brake zones, but even so, big adjustment for Corey. So he's just trying to hang on here. Currently runs 5th overall, 4th in the pro class, with Milroy getting around him.
Drew Stavely behind the wheel of the Ian Lacey Racing Aston Martin, the native of Walnut, California, 35 years old. A champion in Pirelli GT4 America back in 2019 in the AM division, in which he competed against his current co-driver, Frank Gannett. And the reason I bring that up is we talked about what a transition it is for the team and for the drivers. They are, the two drivers, just 2 years removed from both racing a GT4 car as AMs. And here they are running in the big show.
Yeah. Now, it's great to see, and we talk about, having someone like Bas Leenders as the team principal with the group here, with the McLaren, but also for Ian Lacey Racing. Ian Lacey was a tremendous young single-seater driver, realized that his opportunities to go to the upper levels, was a big twitch there from Colin Brown, were going to be limited, and elected to get into team management, team ownership. And having someone like that, the passion and the understanding of driving race cars, is really a tremendous asset for both Drew and Frank Gannett with that car.
This is Giacomo Altoe, currently running in 7th overall, but 3rd in Pro-Am. And keep an eye on this car tomorrow, because Giacomo was dynamite in qualifying earlier this morning.
He really was, and we talk about opportunity to make a statement. He's already a Lamborghini factory pilot, so you wouldn't think you need to really prove anything, but for him to be running with the TR3 team that have had a lot of success here in this championship over the last few years, but pretty much when you compare that group with K-Pax, so much experience, so much history, so many race wins, he wants to go up against those Lamborghini factory pilots tomorrow and put one over on them, so that'll be a fun show.
Definitely a great way to measure himself as we look at our race vision powered by AWS, corner speeds at the carousel. Michael Cooper carrying a lot of speed into that particular corner. This car second on the list with Giacomo Altoe at the wheel. Ollie Milroy third on that list. Wanted to quickly update Corey Lewis's situation, because it looks like he's falling into the clutches of Jan Halen. There's 1.2 seconds between those two at last check. And with the way that Jan has been coming over the last couple of laps, he is most likely closed in, maybe even made that move. We'll see if we can pick up that fight here at some point, but that's probably the closest battle we've got going at the moment.
Yeah, and you think about Jan Halen, one of the last of the late breakers, and he's going up against Corey Lewis, who doesn't have ABS, so that might be a pretty quick fight.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it does seem like Corey's got an arm tied behind his back a little bit. Certainly no fault of his own. Top speeds at the S's. Let's see, has this changed much? Dropped even further.
Caldarelli there, you can see just sometimes you think, oh, he's wide through a corner. No, he's not wide. He's just looking for that grip, just trying to find the Corsa blacktop to just really get the bite with those Pirelli tires and try and give him the grip through the corners. It's just so polished. It's like ice on the racing line. When you get that little bit of water, the oil and everything, the residue from the race cars is down there. You go outside, it's like suddenly you're on Velcro.
You can see that car shifting around under him. Even if you do take what I guess you could call the traditional rain line, which is that wide arc around, you still have to cross the traditional line twice. Yeah. And so what does that feel like through the steering wheel for you when you go from relative grip to that polished surface you were talking about?
You just have to think it through. You have to really think about that pattern of where they intersect each other and not be hard on the power. Maybe just breathe the throttle a little bit, have the electronic gauge, try and get the car straight. So even if you get a little bit of wheel spin, you're in a straight line, you don't have turn in the car. So it's really trying to square the car up so as you accelerate off a corner and you intersect that dry line, that you go into the straight line.
I'm sure I've asked you this before, but did you enjoy conditions like these?
I loved it, and to the point about the Ollie Milroy is doing such a great job. He's from England. He's used to it, do you know what I mean? And I think the key is, particularly for some of the drivers we're talking about, like the George Kurtzes of the world, he's starting to experience the Spa 24-hour in the rain. You can't hide. You can't leave it under the tent. You can't leave it in the garage. You got to go out there and do it. And I found that when I started racing in go-karts, for example, it's not like put a cover on the go-kart when it starts raining. No, go out there. You know, even if you're not comfortable with it, the only way you're going to get better is to experience it and go out there in the rain. And gradually you get to love it, and then it becomes an advantage for you.
So it sounds like you had no choice but to like it.
No, if you want to race, no. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting home for many days waiting for the sun to shine in the UK.
Andrea Caldarelli leading this race and turning in the fastest lap of anyone, barring Giacomo Altoe that last time around. He did a 2:28 flat, did Caldarelli. Altoe back in 7th place did a 2:27.4, so that's half a second quicker. Shows how much Giacomo is pushing. He's trying to run down Corey Lewis, and maybe that's some of that bragging rights that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, last lap he was some 6 seconds quicker than Corey Lewis, and he's only 6 seconds behind, so give him a couple of laps and he should be right there.
And Haylen did make that pass, by the way, so moving on, Haylen now to 5th overall. That was not a pass for class position, so Milroy still leads in Pro-Am over Haylen. Altoe running in 3rd in Pro-Am, and that's the reason he's pushing, because I don't know how far back he is on Haylen. 14 minutes left. It's probably a bit too much to ask, but he's really flying at the moment. So, if nothing else, the pressure on Jan, well, here we go. Altoe closing in, as you see right there on Corey Lewis. You could see Corey in the shot just a moment ago, and Altoe is going to want to make that pass as quick as possible just to preserve any chance he might have in running down Haylen for 2nd in class.
Yeah, I mean, I think Corey's pretty defenseless right now in terms of that braking system having that failure, so he's just trying to hang on. But look how he's tiptoeing through that corner. You talk about the speed, about 120 miles an hour through there in the dry, and I would guesstimate that was about 90.
Full course yellow.
Oh, that's why he looks slow.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. I'm like, boy, he nearly came to a standstill.
Track conditions, we're being told, have led to this full course yellow, and the rain has been unceasing since it started. And you look, and around the track, you do see some standing water there.
So he's not loving this as our leader.
Well, he'd be perfectly fine if he just followed that Lamborghini Urus safety car for the next 13 minutes and 50 seconds.
Right, but if we have 10 minutes of this and then we go back racing again, he's suddenly got a lot of pressure from behind.
That he does. That he does. Well, it's hard to say from where we're seated, but just visually, it does look like the water has built up and it's starting to puddle in certain places. And there is a lot of elevation change around this track, and that leaves you with little gullies for that water to start to accumulate. And as good as the Pirelli rain tires are, there's a certain point you reach where we're talking about standing water, and no tire is going to make it through at any rate of speed without some element of hydroplaning. And when hydroplaning enters the picture, it becomes quite dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, even the best drivers, the bravest drivers, when you're literally out of control in a straight line, so maybe they've been listening to some of the radio communication and getting the text messages through the messaging system from the team and crew chiefs that the driver is saying is pretty much undrivable right now. So they've got to make the right call, but you know, as I said, when you're the leader and you have basically a 20-second lead, to suddenly lose all that with the prospect of maybe going back to green, that's not a nice feeling. That'll make you anxious in a hurry.
Well, we have the moment. If you're just joining us, maybe we think back on how we got to this point. And Calvin, help me out if I missed something. But we had an all K-Pax Racing front row. It was an excellent start at the drop of the green from Michael Dinan in the Turner BMW, and he came from the 2nd row and took the lead, led early on in dry conditions, it's worth noting. The rain really didn't start until quite a bit later, right around the time the pit window opened up. By that time, Dinan had dropped back to 4th, and it was K-Pax 1-2. And then the K-Pax team elected to split their strategy. They kept Jordan Pepper out for an extended period of time, one extra lap. They brought in Giovanni Venturini in the sister car at the earliest opportunity. However, they were trying to make the call in the pit lane between slicks and wets, and were held up in the pits, and that cost them dearly even before this ABS issue for Corey Lewis.
Yeah, certainly got them on the back foot there a little bit for Corey with his stint, and since that time, as we said, some technical issues with the ABS system, so not the ideal day, so they're just trying to hang on their damage limitation in terms of the points and the positions they're dropping. So might be good news for Corey Lewis with this yellow. So in terms of K-Pax, they got the leader losing his big comfortable lead, but for Corey Lewis, who looked very vulnerable in terms of dropping more positions, if we don't go back green, he'll probably hang on to that 6th position overall.
Yeah, the guy who's not happy, I'm sure, about this yellow coming when it did is Altoe, because Giacomo was on the charge and was right there. He had just caught Corey Lewis when the safety car was deployed, and it looked like he was set to make one more spot. Admittedly, it's not for class position, so it doesn't really affect Altoid too much, but it does help Lewis because the pro class points, I believe they're paid on an overall basis.
Right.
So you finish in the in 6th overall, you get 6th place points, I think. I think that's how it's done. That's been the case in other championships in the past, but Calvin will double check for me.
We'll have a quick look here. We can probably base it off of where Foley and Diamond finished in the last round, and I don't think that's
okay.
You are right in terms of that is my memory as well, but looking at the points table, they struggled in race 2 and still finished
you're right.
4th, so I think they're actually awarded points based on their class position this year.
And that might come down to the fact that the class is called pro instead of overall, and I think we have seen in the past, going back to the Pirelli World Challenge days, I think that's where I'm getting some of this from, that the overall class was scored that way. So to make sure it's all clear now, I was wrong, and the pro class cars are given points relative to themselves, irrespective of where they finish in the overall order.
And to be honest with you, that may explain why Corey's being super conservative, because it's like, hey, you don't have the car to fight with the lead trio right now in terms of Caldarelli, Ellis, or Foley, so just bring it home. Don't throw it off the road. Don't take any chances. If you need to back off 10 seconds, we see the red flag fly.
And that
Finish
also,
of the race.
yes, will be the checkered flag. So for the 3rd consecutive race, it is the number 3 K-Pax Racing Lamborghini that picks up the win to start the 2021 Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS season. Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper stay perfect, but unlike their runs at Sonoma, this one, they really, it's not to say they didn't have to earn it before, but they weren't super challenged. Here, everything was challenging. They had to fight for position, and they had to fight very difficult conditions.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, once you pass 75% mark in this timed race, you'll get awarded full points as well. So it's not like they're going to get a percentage of their points or anything like that. So this is good news for everyone, and probably the right call. I mean, if it's too dangerous and the drivers aren't liking what they're feeling, the key is going to be whether this weather does in fact improve here any for the other races that we're anticipating here this afternoon.
Looking at the rest of the results, Winward Racing, great result in their new car to come home in 2nd. And you could say the same for Turner, neither of whom really showed that they had pace to run with K-Pax at Sonoma, but especially when conditions got bad, I would say both of those other 2 teams in the pro ranks looked like they absolutely belonged, and they took the fight to K-Pax.
They did. And for Alice, starts from the pole tomorrow. Big weekend potentially for Winward.
Great debut for Inception Racing by Optimum, Ollie Milroy and Brendan Iribe. Really couldn't draw it up a whole lot better than this. Maybe the weather favored them, like you talked about their experience in Europe and in British GT in particular. And that car, as Boss Linders told us, very good in conditions like these. But to come out on debut and pick up a class win in an incredibly strong Pro-Am field, it must be said, I think that speaks volumes for their level of preparation coming into this weekend.
And I tell you what, big hit for the CrowdStrike entry. Colin Brown finishing 10th, so only a single point. That's a big ding for them as they're trying to chase down Jan Hale and Fred Pordad, who finished 2nd, so they scored wonderful points here today. So, great day for some, bad day for others.
Kurtz and Brown came into this weekend 2nd in points, 6 points behind, but that hole got a little bit bigger following this race. There are the results for you. Jordan Pepper, Andrea Caldarelli, perfect in GT World Challenge America competition. 3 for 3 to start the year. Russell Ward and Philip Ellis in 2nd. Bobby Foley and Michael Dinan for Turner come home in 3rd. Ollie Milroy and Brendan Iribe 4th place here today, but winners in the Pro-Am category. Jan Halen continues to show impressive pace along with Fred Pordad, and Fred's stint was not a smooth one, so Jan with a really good recovery to get them up to 2nd. That's good for their championship aspirations as well in the Pro-Am category. As you talked about, Calvin, Corey Lewis soldiers home despite the ABS issues to finish 4th out of 4 in the Pro class, along with Giovanni Venturini, and in 6th overall. Rest of the results right there on the screen. Difficult day today, and I thought we might get this one in because it was, we could see the sun just that little bit when the race got started, and Mother Nature threw us yet another curveball this weekend.
Well, I think what we're seeing now is what we anticipated for the day. So less count of chickens in terms of we've been pretty lucky.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? In terms of we've got some racing in, and this one scored 4 points. Not too many damaged race cars, and live to fight another day tomorrow.
Yeah, so let's look ahead to tomorrow, where Philip Ellis will start the Windward Racing Mercedes from pole position, and he's got Giacomo Altoe starting alongside. We saw the pace that Giacomo had in the wet. He showed it in the dry earlier this morning in qualifying, and then you got Jan Halen starting in third. Colin Brown qualified in fourth, and you got to go down until the 8th spot before you get to K-Pax Racing. 8th and 9th is where they'll start tomorrow. More on that in a moment, but now let's get down to Amanda.
Well, guys, they are taking the winner straight up to the podium, but I was able to grab Ollie Milroy on his way up in your debut in the Fanatec GT World Challenge. Were you expecting to find success this soon?
It's certainly great. It's a great feeling because the level's high. You know, the last couple of days we've had to work really hard to get the car to where we want it. And the conditions, I mean, GT World Challenge America have literally thrown everything at us this weekend. So it's a circuit that I haven't driven before as well, so there was a lot to learn. But yeah, it's a great result. Brendan had a really strong stint. And then the car seemed to come alive in the rain. You know, our pace was really good. It got quite dangerous at the end, so the race director certainly made the best decision for everyone, because as soon as it starts aquaplaning, you've got no control over the car. So yeah, it's a great start to the season. Now, looking forward to getting back out tomorrow.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Look at that smile on Ollie Milroy's face. That is a man who is enjoying his racing right now.
He had an amazing stint, the team. I mean, Brendan, with his experience, what he did, he was hanging on to the lead trio there. I mean, right behind them in their shadows. So that's amazing with how much seat time he has.
A really remarkable debut for them and that team. Can't wait to see what they've got in store for the rest of the season. But looking at tomorrow, as mentioned, 8th and 9th on the grid for K-Pax Racing. The first bit of adversity that they've faced really all season long. How do you think they bounce back for something like that?
I think it's going to be tough. I mean, I think there's a lot of really fast race cars. It's tough to pass here. Not impossible, but they've got some really good strategists there with Thomas Blam and everyone on the K-Pax pit box. So you've got to work some magic. They'll need a little bit of luck. They've got to survive turn one. Can't afford to get too racy. They've got a championship in the big picture to think about. So I think they'd be happy with the podium, to be honest with you. They want to keep this win streak going, but it's going to be difficult tomorrow.
Amanda, are you staying dry down there?
We are trying to, but guys, tell me if you've heard this before. K-Pax wins here in the third race of the season. And Jordan, I want to go back to your qualifying effort. You knew the pressure was on you on those last laps. Did that lead you guys to victory here today?
Yeah, for sure it helped, because to be honest, that BMW was really quick in a straight line. And to start up front, I think it would have been, I managed to keep him under pressure. Thanks, man. I managed to keep him under pressure really early on, and I think if we allowed him to settle in a rhythm, it would have been tough to get him. So, yeah, all good. Super happy about that pole conversion to a win. Couldn't thank the team enough, but also incredible job by my teammate. If you know what he was out there dealing with, to bring it home the way he did is incredible. So, yeah. Good job, and let's see if we can do it again tomorrow.
Well, Andrea, the skies are going to part tomorrow. It's going to be sunny. It's your first time racing here at COTA. Is there anything from the experience today that you can drive forward to tomorrow?
Not really. Just we see tomorrow, really. No, I mean, it was the first time we get out on wet, so it was the first few laps was very challenging, but it was good fun trying to find the line. And yeah, as Jordan said, the last 4 laps was really nice, to be honest. If you had it on board, you would have a lot of fun like me.
Well, congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
3 straight wins to start the season for that duo. Taking a look at the highlights of this race, and see, I wasn't lying. We did start with a dry racetrack. A couple of K-Pax Lamborghinis on the front row, but look at this move, Calvin, by Michael Dynan.
Yeah, just had that BMW right in its power band and just lit the fuse and grabs the lead here immediately. And then had the confidence to maintain it here. Goes side by side with Jordan Pepper through turn 1. As Jordan said, I had to get by him, otherwise he was going to get the confidence to maybe keep the lead of this race.
That came just a little bit later. Here we are on board with George Kurtz for CrowdStrike and DXDT Racing. Give us a tour of what this track looked like in the dry. It was a much different ride around Circuit of the Americas a little bit later. This was a great battle. Michael Dinan and Giovanni Venturini going at it.
Yeah, this was superb here through the final part of the S's. Look how close they get here through this right-hander, then watch the left-hander. Look at the field between these two drivers and giving each other just enough room not to make contact and continue racing.
That was spectacular. Here we had, as the rain started to fall, Fred Pordad dropping back, Aaron Vogel on the attack, coming around the outside in that Mercedes. Unfortunately, her day, along with her co-driver Michael Cooper, went awry when they didn't get the tire strategy quite right. Here we go with the Optimum team, and a little spin there, but it didn't matter. They ultimately recovered from that and were able to get the class win in Pro-Am.
Yeah, just really tricky there right during the pit stop window. So it worked out for everyone to really delay the pit stop, just make one tire change. Some people took some gambles that didn't work out.
Ultimately, the rain came, and it came in droves. That's what it looked like towards the end of this race. Stewards had no choice but to put the safety car out, and then the red flag came a few minutes later, so we're cheated about 15 minutes of racing, but still a great show. Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper staying perfect on the season. They pick up the first race win of the weekend here at Circuit of the Americas. This is a look at the field headed back to the paddock, packing up for the night. Well, eventful day. Let's get down to Amanda with our AM winners.
Well, it's a brand new car for the Ferrari team that won for the AM team. And Jean-Claude, when you think about your new horse bringing it out to this debut, maybe not in the rain, but are you happy with its performance so far?
Oh, absolutely. Nothing like a brand new car. Obviously, you want to take good care of it and keep it running, but circumstances today made it really, really interesting, right? So we're very happy to be here. We're very happy to have the new car and look forward to tomorrow, hopefully some sunshine.
Well, Conrad, while you were at the helm, the weather just opened right up for you. Explain how difficult that is as a driver to take in.
It wasn't too bad until the heavy rain came, and then we started hydroplaning. Visibility became an issue whenever I caught a car, and you couldn't see anything in front. It's kind of like a one-lane racetrack. If you got out of the puddles that the cars were making, you were in deep trouble. So, yeah, I'm just glad the car came back in one piece, and looking forward to tomorrow's race. Cool. Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys.
Now the car is in one piece, and a 12th overall finish for the lone AM class entrant in the field here at Circuit of the Americas. Now go try and dry off and do it all over again tomorrow, Cal.
Yeah, even for the drifting wizard, Conrad there, he said the conditions were pretty sketchy. So great call by the race director here in terms of calling it a little bit early. Everyone gets full points because of the distance that was covered, and we'll just reset here. Hopefully we'll see some more action here. We've got lightning in the area right now, so that's mainly why we're on a hold in terms of determining when the next race start will be here today.
And now we look ahead to tomorrow, where the weather forecast, if it can be believed, has something completely different in store for us. I thought that was an interesting comment from Andrea Caldarelli a little bit ago, Calvin, talking about, well, what did you learn here today that you could apply to tomorrow? Not a whole lot.
Right.
Especially if you don't have any previous track experience, and Andrea doesn't.
No. So, yeah, I mean, I think the key is how they lined up. There might have been some compromise. When we think about this morning, it was damp, and I don't think anyone expected for that second segment of qualifying to dry out to the degree it did. And I think I haven't spoken to the team since, but maybe we saw Pepper grab the pole, Venturini alongside him. And then suddenly the other two drivers struggled as the track dried out. So maybe they were a bit off in terms of the setup. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, but they got work to do. But you have to think big picture. As I said, coming from that deep in this very competitive field might be tough to really think about winning. But let's not forget, you know, they got two pro drivers in both of those K-Pax cars, and you're going up against Robbie Foley, who is going to really give it his all. But then he's going to turn it over to Michael Dinan. We saw what Michael could do today, and then Russell Ward as well. So it's not out of the question that they could break through. You'd think when the AMs get back on board tomorrow, they should be able to deal with that. But then fighting those other two pro cars will be the real hurdle to overcome.
Coming out of today, these are the manufacturer points in the Global Fanatec GT World Challenge. This is actually the GT World Challenge America manufacturer points. My apologies there. Mercedes-AMG on top of Lamborghini as it stands. And again, this takes class results into account. Porsche, Audi Sport, Ferrari, McLaren, BMW is the order leading the third race of the season. And speaking of Mercedes-AMG, I was going to say, one team leaving today, scratching their heads, trying to find a way to rebound, has to be DXDT Racing. This is almost shades of Sonoma all over again, where they struggled as a collective on day one and had to find a way to bounce back, but no better finish than Colin Brown, P5 in Pro-Am, 9th overall, Ryan Dial behind, Michael Cooper down in 14th. They've got a better starting position for tomorrow's race, but that is a collective team that's invested a lot in the offseason, and the results today aren't up to what their expectation level is.
No, they've done a bunch of testing. They're putting in the work, and but the competition is tough. So it's a long season. So certainly for the 04 car that came into this race weekend second in the Pro-Am points, this is a big ding. I mean, they lost 17 points to Ian Halen and Fred Portad today, the championship leaders. So they've got to rebound tomorrow. Dust yourself off. You've got good grid slots tomorrow. Do it right. And but it doesn't seem like they quite got the edge. They seem like they're, 3, 4, 5 tenths off the ultimate pace.
Is it a bit surprising here at Circuit of the Americas? Would you think the Mercedes would show a bit more muscle?
I think so. I mean, it's an all-round car. It's good brakes, has a little bit of everything. I mean, certainly not the fastest car in a straight line. Certainly the BMW seems to have the edge there, but over a lap, it should be good and consistent. But it's all about track position, and if you can't start right at the sharp end, you're going to have a long day ahead of you.
The Pro-Am and Am podiums combined, so you rarely see four crews standing on the podium together, but that's how it's done here at the moment. And of this bunch, I got to say, the Pro-Am winners, of course they're happy. They won the race, but second place, given the struggles we saw early in this run from Fred Portad to bounce back with Ian Halen and get a second-place finish, 5th overall, and see their championship rivals struggle, that is a big win for them, even if they don't get to hoist the trophy that they're after.
Yeah, and we really need a debrief in terms of what was going on there with the 04 car. We saw that extra stop. We couldn't quite tell because of the transponder issue what was going on with George in the car or Colin. So I think there's some gambles taken. Looking at the weather, if they did gamble to put Colin out there on slicks, I don't think it was the smartest move because it looked like it was pretty much set for the rest of the day.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, there is that traditional champagne spray. It's about as fun as it gets if you're a racing driver to get a chance to get up on that rostrum. Special here at Circuit of the Americas as well when you consider some of the names that have stood on this exact same podium.
Yeah, home of the U.S. Grand Prix since 2012. Obviously didn't run here last year with the COVID situation globally, but they'll return this year. And big news that there'll be a second home for a second U.S. Grand Prix. I'm not sure what they're going to call it exactly at Miami next year. So exciting times, but it's a unique racetrack. As you look at this viewpoint, Ryan, where do you see an elevation drop like this? Maybe Spa, of course, but it's pretty unique and very demanding, very technical racetrack, and demands a little bit from the car in terms of different aspects there, but certainly the driver.
One more time, a look at the results. Jordan Pepper and Andrea Caldarelli for the third time in as many races on the top step of the rostrum as far as the pro category goes. Russell Ward, Philip Ellis, runners up today. Robbie Foley, Michael Dinan, a fighting third. That really does not tell the story. Michael Dinan in particular was a star early on in this race. Then you see the Pro-Am winners from Conception Racing by Optimum, Ollie Milroy, Brendan Uribe, Fred Portad and Ian Halen with a nice drive to get up to 5th overall and second in Pro-Am. Then there is the ailing K-Pax Lamborghini of Giovanni Venturini and Corey Lewis. ABS issues waylaid that car. Also a little miscue on pit lane, or else perhaps that result might have looked a bit different for them. But Ziad Gondor and Giacomo Altoe will be right behind them. 7th place in the finishing results, but podium as far as Pro-Am is concerned. This is the overall podium, the Pro Class podium. You see on the right, the Turner duo, Robbie Foley, Michael Dinan, first GT3 podium for young Michael Dinan. I imagine he's smiling big under that mask.
I tell you, for Michael Dinan, I think that early lap stint that he had will really give him a lot of confidence, because I think he came out of Sonoma pretty down. Spoke to Robbie, said Michael wasn't real happy. It wasn't the weekend he anticipated, even though realistically we weren't going to be able to fight for anything a lot more at Sonoma. They had some technical issues with the race car that they got around. They went testing. They've done their homework. They got Jay O'Connell, who's a tremendous engineer, has worked with BMW for many years now, leading the charge there, and they're gradually getting this car dialed into the Pirelli tire. They run it very successful in another championship, totally different tire brand, so it demands something different, and I think they're in the right direction now.
Well, race one had a little bit of everything in it for us with the different weather conditions, great battles up at the front of the field, and happy to say we get to do it again tomorrow with race two coming your way here from Circuit of the Americas at a much more favorable forecast as well. Congratulations to K-Pax Racing, their third win to get the season started, and the third win in their 3 races of association with Lamborghini. Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper pick up their third victory of the season. Pro-Am win, Ollie Milroy and Brendan Erebe out of the Pro-Am ranks from Inception Racing by Optimum, and Conrad Grunwald and J.C. Sada, winners in Am. All right, that's it for us here from Circuit of the Americas. We will be back for race 2 tomorrow.